And when you look at the location of the settlement, it doesn't take you too much to understand what the motivation is. Because, yes, we talk about wickedness, but sometimes when we look at the actions of Nigeria's leaders, wickedness alone or madness alone does not explain it. Let me give you an example. Look at what Tinubu has been doing since May 29 last year. It looks like wickedness. In a way, it looks like madness. Some people will say that because it's always taking. But interestingly, about a week ago, a World Bank vice president actually said that what Tinubu is doing is so good and is what is needed for Nigeria's development that those policies must be allowed to be in place over the next 15 years.
Yes.
That's to give you the understanding that even if it's madness, there's a logic to the madness of our leaders. Because there have been mentions of Fasola, mentions of Sowolu, and all of that. And all of the atrocities each of them have committed on our lives. We are talking about demolition of houses today. What about Okada riders?
Yes.
Have you seen the situation where Okada is being snatched from people? And the kind of agonizing response you see, because this is somebody's livelihood.
Yes.
Somebody who decided to come to Lagos instead of going into crime, decides to find something in order to be a responsible member of society. And then you go and snatch that from him without any provision of an alternative. And then the same Lagos State will say that they are battling criminality. There's too much armed robbery. People are going into too much drugs. There's a logic to this. And that is what the example of Kobaba that I've mentioned. As far as they are concerned, that waterfront settlement is $1 billion investment. So as far as they are concerned, the fact that people are living there, poor people can't even afford electricity and coal, it's a wastage of a prized estate. So the logic therefore is to chase people away, and then in the next 6 months you see tall high-rise buildings established there. And by the time you go and find out how much the rent there is, then we're talking about 15 million, 20 million. So the human beings that were uprooted from that place, they are not fit to stay there. But the new housing estate that you established there, is it not the same human beings that are going to be there?
Yes.
That gives you a clear understanding of what is happening, what they are trying to say. And that is why we must give a clear ideological answer. Is that as poor people, as workers, as informal sector operatives, we have no right to shelter. We have no right to life. As far as they are concerned, when it comes to a question of development, they are not talking about development from the point of view of meeting the needs of every one of us. What they mean by development is to establish a safe place for those who are rich to be able to enjoy their lives.
Yes.
And that is why, when you look at what is happening in Lagos State now, under 1 hour, if rain falls, everywhere will be filled up with water. But how do you explain a co-Atlantic city? A price estate that was practically, built on top of water. That tells you that the engineering acumen to solve the flooding problem of Lagos State actually exists. It is the same way that electricity exists if you are a band A person and you are prepared to pay the thousands of naira that is required for sustained electricity supply. So that where I'm going therefore is that as sufferers of these iniquities of these our leaders, we need to have an understanding that we do not just need to fight and resist, but we also need to begin to discuss among ourselves what kind of development, what kind of society, what kind of future do we need. Because it is one thing to talk about development. It is another thing for that development to be available for everyone. And that will require that those of us who have already suffered this attack, we do not just retreat and say that it has happened to me, you don't care whether it happens to another person again. Because solidarity is actually how we poor people can be able to save ourselves under this kind of society. Unity, solidarity, and constantly acting together. The other point I'd like to make is that after all is said and done, we also have to discuss among ourselves whether this kind of government that does not care for the rights of ordinary people is what we want to continue to have. And I say this because all of us are active participants at community level in the political process. When we have suffered like this, they have collected your okada, they have demolished your shop, they have demolished your house. Then what happens in the next 2.5 years when election comes? I think that all of us should take a decision that we must never find ourselves in the position anymore where we are going to use this our hand to cast votes to people who are going to unleash these atrocities on our lives and on the lives of our children. In Yoruba land, it is a tragedy. It's a tragedy. It's a different thing if we are not even involved in the process. When the military people came, nobody brought them. They forced themselves into power. But democracy is based on voting. So whether they rigged it, whether you not come out to vote, the reality is that those who are in power claim their presence in power on the basis of universal suffrage. And that is why, as poor people, we also must talk about the question of political power. And that is why there's a need for us to also connect all of these our struggles to the need to build a political alternative. Because I'm very convinced, and I think all of us who are undergoing this problem must also begin to look towards that kind of understanding. That so far you have this kind of political parties in power, PDP, APC, and other parties that support the same agenda of anti-poor policy. There's no way you want to do it. It is going to be the same policy. I'm an education activist. If I begin to tell you what they are doing in the education sector, you also realize that it's the same thing. These people don't have any interest in running Nigeria in the interest of the ordinary people. That's why when you look at all of them, most of them, if they are not, if they don't have dual citizenship, many of them have the choicest of their properties and wealth outside the country. So that as far as they are concerned, if this country goes bust today, all they need in their pocket is their international passport, and they are gone.
Yes.
How many of us in this room now can afford money to relocate?
How many get passports? How many get
So,
passports?
what that means, therefore, is that when we are talking about patriotism, which is defined as defending the interests of the fatherland or the motherland, it is the poor, it is the working class that is the only patriotic force in society. But we don't know where to go. And that is why our struggle must not just end at, okay, they have collected our okada. We fight for 3 months. We forget about it. Election comes. You go and vote for the honorable in your community. Because the honorable, you think that if you put him there again, let us see, something will come. Meanwhile, he's in the political party whose agenda, philosophy, constitution, program is fundamentally anti-people. There is no way you can get pro-people development from that kind of a process. And that is why, as we are taking a decision to fight against all of these policies, we must also be prepared to do the necessary work of chasing these vultures out of power and replacing them with a new government that is interested in the welfare of the people. And that is why I particularly like the example of Jakonde that Comrade Komolafe has mentioned. Because these people, they give the impression that there's no other form of development other than what they are doing now. They say that it's not possible to run electricity without privatizing it. They are privatized electricity now for the past 11 years. Nothing. The national grid has collapsed in the last 11 years for over 100 and something times. In this year alone, maybe over 6 times. They said they cannot provide telecommunication services except privatization. We pay one of the highest tariffs for calls and data. Meanwhile, there was a time in this country when we did not even have the kind of abundance of oil where there exists today. When public education was available, was free and subsidized, when healthcare was standard, and when access to decent jobs was available to most people, not just those who are educated, even those who are not fully educated.